This is IBM Museum, and I'm trying to just put together a real quick video addressing that CheckMCA routine. And I thought I'd pull in the system, and this thing's so big, I'll show a different view in just a moment of how it just fills the bench here. And I've gone through and actually rearranged a little bit in the studio. And I've also gone through, I did get some feedback on the routine that I listed on my web space for CheckMCA. I had some pseudocode in there, went through and I was trying to just drag the carry flag through the routine. And of course, I'm not a programmer. I just had that as a little bit of demonstration, didn't really go through. In fact, when I went through and initially looked at it, I found it was actually an inverted error. It would go through the other way where it would it actually branch out after it checked for the system descriptor table for that bit setting that was that where the system would report it's a microchannel system. I do have that page cache as well, and that actually will be probably part of my scene shift here. As I say, I'll go through and show this machine. I just wanted to pull a machine. It's actually got a little bit of a spoiler in a way for what I have up there, and I'll go through and demonstrate that. Now, going through, let's just do it as a lead-in. I went through on the bench, and I had them all 30 there, and didn't even move the CD and the diskette drive, external diskette drive. As you can see, just move them all 30 off to the side to make room for this big behemoth of the system. And so I use that mol 30 actually to make a boot diskette. I'm relatively certain. I'll go through and show the little paper I have with a lot of systems. I actually tucked it inside the door, and we'll flip to the other routine. But I wanted to go through and show, this is that get configuration or where it retrieves what's called the system descriptor table. And I can probably leave my image up there. I might even have to move my image around for some of the camcorder view, but it's going through from feature byte 1. There is a bit 1, and that's right towards kind of the center of the screen here is what it seems to be. And that's set if if the system reports that it's a microchannel bus type. And we'll be looking at another aspect of this in the bit below that, about that dual bus system as well, but I won't give anything away. Let me get shifted to, and in fact, I'll go through, I can hide that browser capture. I'm going to flip to even, here I've got my other webcam set up, and it gives a little bit better view. I mean, I could go through and I could get rid of myself to see a little bit better. And just humongous system. But the anchor webcam I have set up, I'm finally using again, that shows a little bit better of the view of how I want to look at this, at least initially. And so I'm off the screen. It won't be any phase differences or anything like that. I don't have as clear a view of how it should, so I have to end up glancing over to the to my recording screen. But this is a PC Server 320, and really on the front, I mean, that's the only indication. Otherwise, the badge just says plain IBM. And going through this, I have these, of course, in the unlock position. I do have some keys for these, but pulling that open and drops the paper out. I'll go through that here, kind of concealing one little aspect, but this is the front of the system. And I just hauled this in here and I just wiped it down, cleaned up a little bit. this is a sealed system, and it you know, it has a CMOS battery and other things that there inside. I don't know the last time that I went through and worked with it. Um, I mean, I went through and wrote down some information, and I kind of knew, and this is on top. So I knew a little bit what I had to work with, and so I've got 320 with my thumb over one little particular aspect, and it even says maxed out, and then I have identifies itself as 520, and so there's also the bigger, imagine that, even bigger PC Server 520 that uses the same planers, and I'll explain what I mean by planers later on. But it's a bigger case that goes through and uses the same planers, and I don't know why I necessarily have it marked as what identifies itself as a 520. There's actually some BIOS versions, and this is saying it has the 29A BIOS, which may be the factor of just like a splash screen or something else that says that it's a 520 instead of a 320. Because I did go through and move some of these some of the planers around in these units, and I'll go through and give a little bit of indication on the planers as well. And so I've got 2 times 133 megahertz, and what that means is the CPUs. This is actually a dual CPU unit, and the max speed of the CPUs is really determined by the planar version as well. I didn't even go through and clean my paper. It's still got that stuff and dust on top. And it says 256 megabyte, and the last listing there is bad fat hard hard disk drive, HDD. And I'm not calling the system names. Fat, the file allocation table, is just a method of storage. Fat versus H. Well, the NT's HPFS. the later file system. I mean, when we had DOS and even the initial Windows 95, 98, they had the file allocation and either FAT16, FAT32 for the hard drives, and went on to later to handle bigger storage capacities. And so I'm just letting people know I'm not calling the system any sort of names or the hard drive any names. I was saying FAT. But I saw from that, and that actually works out. I don't even know what OS might have been on there or anything like that. But that's why I made up the boot diskettes for the system. I'm going to go through, and kind of a scary thought. This is a sealed system I've gone to. We're going to hope that the diskette drive works, and put a boot diskette in it. But it's interesting up at the top, I have that maxed out question mark. I mean, this seems like it's a fairly maxed out for what it is, for being a 320. And of course, it's got the CD-ROM drive. That's the reason I wanted to go through and use the Anchor webcam here, because with this door coming up in this way, and there's also another door in here, and that is and it actually has an arrow, kind of the push-pull. It's got the arrow pointing the other way, and I was trying to go the one way. I want to be careful with plastics, but this actually has a RAID array of drives in there. And normally, if I'm going through the scheme that I did, if I've got an array set up, I actually have a separate hard drive that I'm saying that's bad on that paper. But it should go through and initialize those. The RAID drive, I mean, that's typically battery backed as well. So I'm just playing all around with fire here. And so let me find where I put my boot diskettes. And I do have this on video capture. So what I can do here, I can get my camcorder view, or my clear click, and I made a couple diskettes of the same contents, put boot files, put DOS debug. Ooh, we may have a very short video if this acts like, yeah, if we can't get a diskette in there to boot from, and that's not okay. Ooh, so it's gets the diskette in there. I might need needle nose to get it out, but we've got a diskette in there. And I think the boot order on this, I think we're fine with that. Let me try starting it up. At least I get to see the screen over here. I can go through, and what I'll do is hide the Anchor webcam. Okay, so there's the PC Server 520. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, and the configuration setup for press F1 and then escape for fast post. And I'll probably get myself on the screen here in a moment. Bad CMOS battery. Okay. There's the Adaptec controller firing up. Okay, microchannel configuration change. That's interesting. We kind of gave a little bit of a spoiler there. And that's the array drives that are not responding. Okay, so press any key. Okay. Okay, and we're just going to automatically configure. And I don't think this will have necessarily a I don't think it necessarily has a boot. See, there's the 8641 MZS for the machine type model. Let's see exit setup and see. And we didn't change any date, time or date or anything like that, but we'll see. Okay, going through and checking memory. I'm just looking at recording time. Maybe I should have gone through and done a fast post. This is going to take a while to count through the memory. I said that it was 256 megabyte, and we're not even halfway there yet. Okay, so pressing escape gets us a fast post as it reports down there. Okay, it's trying to boot from, looked like it keyed up the CD-ROM. And normally these, you can't see, but it's flashing for the top two Actually, for quite a few of the hard drives. Okay. So we're going to get where it's going to boot from the diskette, just like I wanted to do. And I could go through and I could do a date and time. I'm not gonna worry about that at this point. So let's do a directory for what we put on here. And I don't have the code view program and really of going through and to step through the program. I guess I could have for a little bit more elaborate angles. But we do have that, and we do have the edit program, we do have debug. And so what I want to do is I want to show the check error program, the batch file. Okay. And it just runs that CheckMCA. And then if the error level is 1, if the output of that is reported back for 1, it says this system is microchannel. So let's go through and just run that. And I mean, that's, so we see the output of the program. The CheckMCA program does report that this system is indeed microchannel. And I wanted to go through, and even for the other angle that I showed on the screen, in fact, I'll have to see what place it is for the, because as I mentioned, it's the right place. So that feature byte 1 that we were looking at, bit 1, the bus is microchannel. And then below that is bit 0 for the dual bus system. And I think that even merits some investigation here. I want to go through and, we don't have code view to go through, but we can kind of, I think we've got and I'll include that in the video description, but I want to go through and actually want to do some other, and this actually works out really good because it gives me, I've got my screen that I can see typing over here. And so we're going to go through and we're going to do edit. And we're going to go through and do the CheckMCA script file. And here's hoping that everything copied over fine, everything that we need to do. So where this test byte PTR, the test instructions, it's actually a bitwise check. That's what's going through and checking that particular bit, that 1 bit in the whole byte. And so if we wanted to go through and change this to, and really it could be a shorter program, but we're going to branch, it's going to go through and branch out as it is anyway. And so I'm going to go through for this version, we're going to go through and just replace that with, we're going to check the lowest order bit. And we're going to actually name this different. We're going to go Alt F and we're going to save as. And here we're going to go with just and we can't put question marks in file names. So I'm just going to say dual bus script. We're going to save that. We're going to Alt FX. Okay. Oh, and I actually should have gone through, forgot one little angle as well. Like I say, I like doing these in real time because the In fact, we'll go dual bus STR. And I typically, when I did a script file, I would do the name, the what it would call the file, the compiled or the assembled file. I typically did that at the top. And so we're going to go through, we're just going to do the same thing. We're going to call this the same dualbus.com. And as I say, we're going to leave a lot of the extra content in there that we don't necessarily need to check. Makes the executable just a little bit bigger, but it's going to do the check that we want to do. And then Alt F, exit. Okay. We're also going to go through, after we do the debug, we're going to do debug. We're going to pipe in that dual bus .str. Okay. Everything, I didn't see any errors reported by debug. And we're actually going to do a different. So we're going to go through and for the check error, we'll do the, or excuse me. Oh, okay. Alt F X. Okay. I didn't put the file, the edit check error dot bat. That's all very critical. Every little bit counts. So what we're going to do here, we're going to extend this and we're going to say dual bus. Okay. And we're going to do the same thing that we can do by errors. The arrow keys. And we can go Alt E. We're going to do copy. And Alt E. We're going to do paste. Okay. And we're actually. Okay. So we're going to do that. A dual bus. And so we're going through and we're running the CheckMCA routine and seeing it'll report if it's a microchannel, which we saw previously. And then we're doing the dual bus with a modified version, and that's longer than what it needs to be. I could go through and trim that down and make that a little bit more to the point. But now when we do the check error, okay, and it didn't report for a dual bus. And I could look with debug. I wonder if, even though I was hoping that it'd go through and I'm even trying to think that normally the system, and this is where the that code view program 000. I'm even trying to think of where the like we're just gonna kind of quickly scan through because I'm trying to remember. I'm just looking for the system descriptor table. E5F. 6. Yeah, we'd probably need more of the code view program for going through and determining why that's just saying the microchannel bus. We need to go through and under code view to run that, because let me go through. I'll get switched over to the camcorder view. Yeah, that's good. I'll go through and I'm going to hide myself there. And here's really for the spoiler that it has the MCA 320 on that paper at the top, because there actually is a different type of PC Server 320. There is an EISA model. And so that wouldn't report the microchannel. And I'll go through it. I have one of those systems I can go through and pull it out and run through the checks. In fact, when we get to the dual bus portion, because both of these actually should report that they're dual bus, but only this version report that it's microchannel. And there's actually some different versions of the planers. And I'll do that kind of ahead of the outro for the 320 page and to show the different planar types. And I think I have all 3 different planar types. This is actually the lowest level of the microchannel 320 version. So all these are microchannel slots, 32-bit. And it's got onboard SCSI, of course, the diskette drive, all sorts of stuff. And even in a sense of running out of room, you have your dual CPUs down here, these Pentium, and these are actually a lower speed. I forget what this is set at, the maximum of this board is capable of. I think it's like a 90 megahertz maybe. This is the older version, and it's actually by a tag. Okay. And it's made in the UK, 55 for that Greenock, Scotland. I guess I was corrected on my pronunciation by Hugh that actually lives in Scotland on one live stream. And he says it's Greenock is the pronunciation. I was always saying Greenock. And then, so it has that barely visible, kind of cut off on that label, that 96G 1340. And I'll pull up the page for that in just a moment. And that just is stating that this is basically the least capable planar of the microchannel version of the planar. There's 3 different versions. And there's a memory board that goes down here. Of course, I've got one in my unit there and it's got SIM slots for me to go through and have the 256 megabyte. Here's the video out. And then you have the keyboard and mouse connectors. You don't really have anything else on that back plane area. Just all the connections for the internals of the diskette drive and the SCSI bus on these connections, power connections at the top. And these are, I think there's parallel and serial ports that are there. Now, that's why I was saying for a dual bus, I would expect this thing would report a dual bus. And I'll just have to go through and check that code. That sounds like another video. And that sounds like bringing the code view editor over and kind of doing some checks and even finding out where the system descriptor table is, which the code view will effectively tell us as it runs through. But these bottom 2 slots, I mean, and that's effectively, that should be shared for this position. those are PCI slots. And so this is ultimately a dual bus, just like the ESIA model has PCI in combination with the ESIA. And so I would thought it would report the dual bus, but maybe something wrong in my code. And IBM did have some PC servers that were dual bus like this. And so we just get working with code. We find out if it's supposed to report what we think it would do. But that CMOS battery, I'll have to get into this unit and replace the CMOS battery and to go through and get it, figure out what's wrong with that hard drive, and even probably go through and rebuild the array for all the issues it's having with the blinking lights here of the drives. Just the top two are blinking. I'll go through and I can reseat them and things like that just to kind of check things over. But I thought that was a pretty good, for this being at least a microchannel bus system, that it would report that correctly. And I'm going to go through. I'll pause here because I want to get the where it's got the diagram and has all the files that you can get for the system. And it looks like I have the latest BIOS, at least there, even though it applied for the 520 and I've got the 320, and really the it's just all the same planar in there as well. So it, it doesn't really matter except for that one digit. And this shows one of the planar versions, although you can look down lower on this page, and it talks about, for the PC Server 320, which is what we have, microchannel systems, there are two system board FRUs. FRU part number 96G1340, which I showed on the screen, supports 75 megahertz and 90 megahertz only. FRU part number 96G3694 supports 75 megahertz, 90 megahertz, 100 megahertz, and 133 megahertz. And I think it's either that or the next little block says, for the PC Server 520 microchannel systems, there's one system board, FRU. It's 96G2648. Supports 75 megahertz, 90 megahertz, 100 megahertz, and 133 megahertz. And so I probably have the 520 planar in this 320 case, I would think. Or I have that the 96G3694, because I have 133 megahertz CPUs in there. Clearly they're supported. And it talks about, in addition, there are two versions of 96G3694 and 96G2648. And they talk about all these original players, the level D, level E, what jumpers they may have or not have. And so it'd be worth looking in here to see on the system what planar I ultimately have. But they, later on the page, there's actually a matrix for the CPU speeds, which planar you have, all figuring out all that detail. So what the information on this page is just fabulous for determining which planar you have and what it is capable of, and what you do for the jumper settings to get the planar running. And so that was I thought pretty informative. And it was informative enough. I was kind of let down for all the fact that it didn't go through and report that it was a dual bus system. But what can you do? You know, I'll have to get out the code view and transfer that over from the Mul 30, and then maybe single step another video. We could have done if I'd have been a little bit more prepared to have that code view up there, but I didn't think it was really necessary or anything like that. And I will go through in the meantime as well. I'm going to reduce that size of the dual bus utility. Maybe even might even think of a better name or anything like that for it, rather than just dual bus. I know I can't use question marks to check dual. I don't know what I'll have to come up with, but I'll show a little bit more of the planers and things like that later on. Maybe even open up the case and show a little bit of layout. And this actually is a little bit more with the bigger system. It's a little bit more of a idea that the studio I'm trying to get set up, it's able to have the bigger items. I got a little bit more room around me to show that as well. So maybe some of that content will eventually filter over to that, and I'll bring out those bigger systems. Talking about the 520s and even the 720 is a PC Server 720 is a dual bus too. A lot more PCI slots, a lot more microchannel. And it is a big, heavy system, and I'm going to do that from that studio because that's very close to where the machine is stored. So I don't have to move it too far to get it up in that, what will be that studio. So I think that'll be a great video as well. But worked out well enough for this. I mean, we've seen the CheckMCA, the CheckMCA seems to detect microchannel systems, and I've got that pseudocode corrected on my site. I just mimicked what Major Thomas set up, what his better code did, and just copied it over my page like a very good programmer, I guess. But if you enjoyed the video, go ahead and click on that like button, and as always, subscribe my channel if you've not done so already. But this is IBM Museum. That's all I have for now. Thank you.